was a typical Monday. Kids at the assembly were as interested in the principal's announcements as they would be in a blank TV screen. You could almost see the thought bubbles of weekend plans and upcoming tests hovering above their heads. I was no exception, caught in my daydream until the word transfer student pulled me back to reality. After the assembly, my teacher caught up with me. "Rebecca, would you mind showing the new kid around? It'd look good on your student council application." "Yeah, sure," I mumbled, half in my world. I found Liam by the gym. His eyes were squinted at a school map. He looked normal enough, nervous maybe, but who wouldn't be on their first day? "Hi, you must be Liam. I'm Rebecca." I reached out to shake his hand. He nodded and gave a half smile, returning the shaky. I felt no red flags, just another student lost in the maze of high school hallways. As we walked, I showed him the essentials, the cafeteria, the library, and the science labs. He seemed interested, but there was something off. I noticed he would subtly take pictures of places as we moved, claiming it was to help him remember. The weirdness started when he asked about the security cameras. Why would a new student care about that? But okay, maybe he's just very aware of his surroundings. Then, he asked about the janitors and their work hours. When he asked for my home address, my gut told me something was wrong. I deflected by saying I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. We started walking again, walking by a door marked "Basement Authorized Personnel Only." He perked up. "What's in there?" he asked, suggesting we look. I could see his facial expressions changing when I said no to him. I made a quick excuse, telling him I had a club meeting. I left him thinking he was just another new kid trying to settle into his new school's environment. In the next few days, my Snapchat was flooded with friend requests from names I didn't recognize. The first snaps seemed harmless, just pictures of the school, then the street near my home. But then, they got scarier. Pictures of my car and, most shocking, my living room. That's when I put it together. The snaps, questions about the school, and my address were Liam. I deleted Snapchat right then, my fingers hovering over the dial pad, unsure if I should call the police. But then I shrugged it off by assuming that I was overthinking. I was home alone one night, watching a movie. I heard footsteps upstairs. No way, it was my imagination. I ducked into my closet and dialed 911, tears blurring my vision. After an eternity, I heard sirens. I felt relief, but still couldn't shake my fear. The cops searched my place but found nothing, well, almost nothing. On my coffee table, someone had scratched the words, "See you soon, Rebecca." The officers said it would be best to stay somewhere else that night. I agreed. The next day, I walked straight into the school's admin office. "I need to know more about Liam," I said. The staff looked confused, scrolling through records on their computers. "There's no Liam enrolled here," one of them finally said. My stomach sank. He was never a student. Time passed, days to weeks, weeks to months. My phone was quiet. No more scary snaps. But I was always on edge, my eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror, to passing strangers. That sense of normalcy I craved never came. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. It was late, the sky outside dark as ink. I saw it was a Snapchat notification. My finger hovered over the screen, reluctant. When I finally opened it, it was a photo of me, sleeping. The shot was taken from outside my window, the flash illuminating my closed eyes. "Sweet dreams, Rebecca," the caption read. I showed my parents. They were horrified, insisting we change all social media, get new phone numbers, anything that could cut this person out of my life. 4 years have passed since that night. I've received no messages or signs of Liam, but the feeling of being watched, it never left. Every buzz of my phone sends a jolt through me, a cruel reminder that wherever he is, he's still out there.
I've always been a square peg in a world of round holes, not quite fitting in despite my best efforts. Being 14 in a class full of 17-year-olds never felt right. As I sat in Mrs. Thompson's biology class, doodling in my notebook, I could overhear the usual banner: parties, dating, stuff that made me roll my eyes. I found it all so pointless. This whole skipping grade thing started when I was 10. They made me take this IQ test in a room that felt like a hospital. I wasn't scared or anything, I was curious. When they told my parents I should skip a few grades, Mom and Dad were happy but kind of worried too. My first day in junior high was a mess. I was 11 and everyone seemed 2-3 years older than me. Biology was usually a sanctuary, a place to escape. Mrs. Thompson, a woman with a no-nonsense haircut and a stern look, controlled the room like a ship's captain. I thought it would be just another normal Tuesday, until the intercom buzzed. The room went from casual to urgent. My pencil was still mid-air when Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened just a fraction of a second before she flew into action. We all moved like wind-up toys, programmed to seek cover. Mrs. Thompson herded us behind lab tables, next to cabinets, anywhere out of sight. My spot was behind a lab table, next to a biology textbook that, at that moment, lost all its relevance. Nobody spoke. It was as if we were all sharing a terrible secret, and words could make it real. Mrs. Thompson immediately ran and locked the door. She hurriedly pulled the blinds and flipped the lights off faster than anyone could. Everyone looked confused and wanted to know the next step. The room was almost silent, and then, from a distance, I began to hear the screams. The screams were soft at first, like an eerie whisper carried by the wind. But they grew louder, more frantic. They sounded nothing like what I'd heard in movies or on TV. This was real, visceral, and terrifying. Without warning, a pounding began. Doors down the hall, thudding, each hit resonating in the pit of my stomach. The sound was methodical, deliberate, and growing closer. As I tried to picture what was causing it, my mind drew blank, the horror too much for my active imagination. The room was thick with tension. We looked at each other, our eyes wide with shared fear. For a 14-year-old who'd always felt out of place, I now felt even more vulnerable. My palms were clammy, my heart beat erratic, and I tasted something metallic like I'd bitten down on a coin. Suddenly, a loud crash broke my train of thought. A fist, dirty with hints of dried blood, burst through the glass of our classroom door. The room erupted. Jenny let out a piercing scream. Robert, usually so composed, fell backwards, knocking over a chair. Then, I saw it. The mesmerizing dance of a flame followed the glint of a lighter as it lit the edge of a cloth sticking out of a bottle. My heart sank. I watched in horror as the Molotov cocktail flew, its fiery tail trailing behind before smashing against our door. Flames spread, their glow casting an eerie light. Heat washed over us and panic took hold, but out of that chaos came an unexpected hero. Mrs. Thompson. She'd transformed from our stern biology teacher to a beacon of hope in seconds. She bolted for the fire extinguisher, yanked out the pin, and advanced on the flames with a determination I'd never seen before. The room was filled with the hiss of the extinguisher. She then used its nozzle to wedge into the shattered window gap. When the wail of sirens finally sliced through the air, my body didn't know how to react. The PA system crackled to life. Police were on site. The suspect was apprehended, and the lockdown was lifted. Then, the door clicked open. We stepped out into the hallway, all wearing the same look, relief mixed with something darker. Later, the police told us that the guy who'd tried to attack us was mentally ill. Also, he was an escaped patient from a nearby mental hospital. He was not taking his medicines regularly and became out of control. Weeks went by. The school got a security makeover. New doors, rules, everything. Even the teachers had to take special training. We had counselors talk to us, but no one could shake the memories lodged in our heads. I still jumped at loud noises, and sitting near a door made my stomach churn. We'd come so close to losing everything, but we hadn't. When I was studying in high school, every morning was a rerun. Wake up, dress, trudge to school, sit in the never-ending drone of classes, and finally get home. Tommy and I had known each other since middle school, our friendship as comfortable as an old pair of shoes. Sarah joined our group last year. We were a trio united in our silent protest against the dullness of high school life. So when Sarah's text buzzed my phone during history, I didn't think twice. I caught Tommy's eye. He was doodling, something I couldn't make out. We shared a look. We both knew. I texted back, "Let's do it." The walk to the court felt like shedding a skin. Each step away from the school seemed to peel off layers of boredom and routine. Tommy had his basketball, and Sarah carried a Bluetooth speaker. The sun was out, the air fresh, our spirits high. Once we were on the court, Tommy passed me the ball. It felt like freedom in my hands. I took the shot, but missed it, and we all laughed because it didn't matter. For the next few hours, we were too much lost in the game. We were just getting into our groove when we saw them. College kids awkwardly walked toward us. The guy leading them had this eyebrow piercing that sparkled in the sun. "Sorry," he said. "Thought you were someone else." And then they headed deeper into the woods. I tried to shake off this funny feeling in my stomach. We returned to our game, the swish of the net filling the air. We were busy enjoying the game when we heard a blood-curdling scream. Sarah's basketball fell with a thud. Tommy looked at me. Every muscle screamed at me, "Run." But something made my feet edge toward the woods. I sneaked through the brush, breathing shallow. That's when I saw it. Two masked figures were behind the tree, with baseball bats swinging in their hands. The college kids we saw earlier were lying on the ground, moaning in pain. I tried to hide somewhere safe, but my eyes met with one of the men, and the masked figure looked as surprised as I was. In an instant, he pulled out a gun and aimed it right at my forehead. It's funny how everything seems to move slowly in moments of sheer terror. The bat rising and falling, the look of raw fear in the college kid's eyes, every sound amplified. I turned and locked eyes with Tommy and Sarah, my face telling them everything they needed to know. We ran. We ran like we'd never run before. We heard footsteps behind us, then a gunshot, but thankfully, it was missed. After running for a few more seconds, we heard another shot, but it was missed again. The branches of the trees lashed at us, but the sting was nothing compared to the fear that was driving us forward. We burst through the school doors, stumbling into the corridor, out of breath but alive. The janitor dropped his mop with a clatter, startled. Teachers rushed over, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. The alarm rang, a shrill contrast to the scream still echoing in my mind. Cops arrived, stern faces and notepads. I told them everything. My parents showed up eventually, hugging me tight as if they could squeeze the horror out. Relief washed over me, but only for a second. It was surreal to retell it all, knowing that every word made it more real. "They were drug dealers," said the cop finally. "A deal gone bad. You're lucky to be alive." I nodded, but inside, I boiled with frustration. We were witnesses, but what did we see? Masks, bats, terror. Nothing that could genuinely help. Back home, every little sound made us jumpy. Me, Tommy, Sarah. Even the wind against the window felt like a threat. We'd all changed. We became quiet, distant. The carefree spirit of senior year was long gone. Nights were the worst. Sleep became a battle. Every closing of my eyes a replay of that forest clearing. Sarah suggested we all go to counseling, but one look between us and we knew. No amount of talking could erase what we'd seen. We may have escaped with our lives, but we didn't escape the trauma.
Thank you for watching. If you want to support our channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button.